So, Derrick, I understand you just had a chance to review Detective Pikachu on our channel. Not the game, but the movie, right?
I did.
And not only that, Derrick, but we actually all had the chance to go see it ourselves, including John and myself, a week or two early, which is something that we never had the opportunity to do before. So I thought it'd be fun for us to get together and discuss our general thoughts on the movie, as well as nitpick your review, Derrick.
Yeah. Oh, thanks. Hey, I sent you guys that script beforehand. You all approved it.
That's true. No, it was a very good review. So I guess for those who may not watch your review yet, Derrick, do you want to give a quick recap of your thoughts as to what you thought of Detective Pikachu?
Yeah, I mean, I ended up liking it a lot. It's a very good movie in general, not just a good video game movie, but I think this is a very solid movie on its own, and something I think a lot of people are going to enjoy, whether they're into the games or not. If you have even the most basic knowledge of Pokemon, I don't see you having any trouble getting into this movie, knowing what's going on, and really just enjoying yourself. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Did you guys have a different experience?
I feel like you directed that comment at me, Derrick. The having very basic Pokemon knowledge.
Maybe.
No, I mean, I don't disagree. Like, I'm one who, like, I love Generation 1, as I said before, and I kind of fell off the series. I couldn't get really reinvested into it. But despite that, I had no problems enjoying the movie. You know, like, I didn't need a ton of knowledge to keep up with most of the events. Although I do think, I mean, obviously, as one who covers games for a living, I have been, is subjected to Pokemon quite a bit over the years, so I picked up a lot through just osmosis. And I think that definitely helped. But I think we are seeing a bit of a different reaction for some mainstream critics who may not be quite as familiar with Pokemon as we are. So, I don't know, what do you think, John?
I think the movie does a great job introducing you to Pokemon. It starts off where it kind of introduces you to Pokemon trainers and how you catch Pokemon. And then it's like an info commercial about the world of Pokemon. So I think it's a really accessible movie in that sense. But just all in all, it's adorable. Like I want to GIF every single moment of this movie. Every second, I want a GIF of it. Every single Pokemon reveal, every battle, every animation. There's just so much love that goes into this. So I understand that you don't necessarily have to be into Pokemon to like this movie, but you definitely do get a lot out of it if you are a Pokemon fan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you're definitely right there. And real quick, I'm going to just give a quick heads up that there won't be any major spoilers in this discussion, at least not yet. If there will be, we'll give you a heads up to it. I don't think there will be. I think we're going to keep it pretty spoiler-free. But obviously, we may give some details that we didn't in our review. So if you want to go in completely fresh, you probably want to stop watching now. But we are going to avoid any major spoilers with, unless we give a warning for it. So just so you know. But yeah, John, you're totally right. Like everything this movie is adorable. I loved almost every moment involving the Pikachu, the Pokemon themselves. They did a great job capturing the essence of the Pokemon while updating them for like a more photorealistic environment. They look like they belong in this world. And that's really the part that I like most. This feels like a world with Pokemon. And going in, I didn't quite realize that was the actual conceit of this town that it takes place in. That's the whole idea. These Pokemon aren't just your basically your slaves. they exist in this world. They live outside their Pokeballs. They actually have jobs that perform functions in the world, which is super cool to see. I love that. And they did a great job bringing it all to life with the fantastic art direction and CG work. So that, I think, is my overall favorite aspect of the movie. It's just seeing how the Pokemon were incorporated into it. But beyond that, too, or as part of that, is Detective Pikachu himself and how Ryan Reynolds really brings him to life as this very lively, very vocal Pikachu. Which is something that we don't get from quite the other Pokemon because none of them speak English. So that was kind of cool to see. It's fun to see a Pokemon that you can relate to as a fully integrated character.
Mm-hmm. Make no mistake, Ryan Reynolds is the best part of this movie. I've seen a lot of people compare him to the Deadpool character, and I never got that sense. I never thought Deadpool when I was listening to him in this movie. It just was this snarky Pikachu, and I love that the addiction he had to coffee. Like, I emphasized that pretty well, much more than the games ever did. And it just, I think the characterization here works much better than what was in the game. And that goes for Tim as well. Like, this is a much better movie than a storyline or, plot than what the game had.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Tim basically wasn't a character in the game. He was an enabler. Detective Pikachu was the character. But I agree with you. It isn't really Deadpool. He definitely has the voice of Ryan Reynolds, but there's points where he sort of channels that deep husk of Detective Pikachu. It's not a flat tone of Ryan Reynolds. He sometimes does go a bit deeper and darker. And there's some scenes that surprise me. I didn't think Pokemon Company would go for drug references, for instance. There is a drug reference at one point quite early in the movie. There's a point where Detective Pikachu holds a knife. Like, there's some stuff I never thought
Pikachu
I would see
swears
in a Pokemon movie. Yeah, he says hell. Like, there's stuff that would have never been in Pokemon before this.
On the one hand, it's kind of weird to say this because obviously Pokemon is geared towards children, but they're also accessible to people of all ages. But I like that they didn't pander that demographic. I mean, obviously kids will love this too, I think. But as an adult, I didn't feel like out of place watching this film. And I like that it did have like a darker edge to it. Like, it felt like a more mature take on Pokemon. You know, it felt like a more human story, I suppose, than what you might get out of a lot of children's fare.
Agreed. I mean, like, the same way with John. Like, I was like, my eyes went wide when I saw Pikachu grab the knife in that one scene. Like, holy crap, that's a little bit more hardcore than I was expecting. And you know, I really have to emphasize that the action beats in this movie are excellent. They really capture the power of the Pokemon, and there's some legit exciting things happening as you go along, and I really enjoyed that. But almost more so, they really nailed the bond between Tim and Pikachu in this movie. I think that was... like, everything they have together works so well.
I believe the word you used before, Derrick, was electric.
Yes, I did.
Yeah. Perfect term.
I don't want to use the same pun twice.
No, I mean, I think you're totally right. I think they have a great chemistry together, which is fitting because they are together for most of the movie. And they really do bounce off each other quite well. Like, it kind of ties back into what we were saying earlier. These Pokemon feel like part of this world. Like, you don't feel like Tim is ever talking to to nothing, because he is. Like, there's nothing there when he's filming, or, it might be a puppet stand-in, who knows. But, like, it feels like he actually is talking to Pikachu, who obviously exists only in computer graphics. So the way they really brought the world to life again is just exquisite.
I mean, the way all the Pokemon are there, I mean, really early on, that Lickitung scene, I think does a great job of showing, they're here.
Oh, that was such a great scene, too. That's hilarious.
There's two parts of this movie that I think work well. The first part is just revealing the Pokemon, because every single Pokemon reveal feels like an event.
Yeah.
Every time there's a new Pokemon on screen, it's just the way they interact, the way they animate, the things they do. It's different. It's different to what they do in the games. Because when you're playing with Pokemon in the games, they literally just battle, whereas here you're seeing them in a completely new light. And then, of course, there's the chemistry between Tim and Pikachu. And those are the two parts that I think work really well. I mean, there are some flaws. I think the story could have been a bit tighter. But the Pokemon reveals and just the chemistry and jokes and the writing, I think are just superb.
Yeah, I thought the writing was a lot of fun. The jokes are clever, and a lot of them, like, Pokemon fans, will definitely get more out of this movie than non-Pokemon fans. But as Derrick was saying earlier, you don't have to be one to enjoy parts of this movie, I think. However, it's impossible for me to say for sure, obviously, as one who's been, subjected to Pokemon for 20 years now. But I do think they do a pretty good job of making it accessible to most people. Like, I think parents can go to this movie with their kids and enjoy it without knowing anything about Pokemon. Would I necessarily recommend it to them? Maybe not. But I think they still could enjoy it.
I'd certainly recommend this over any of the anime movies. I think that they'll be completely lost with those. Like, I pity my parents for me dragging them to see, the first movie or 2000 or whatever. This is much more accessible than those movies.
Yeah.
And honestly, there was, when I thought about it, I don't think it's quite to the same quality. I mean, it's hard to get to that quality. But I do think this might be this generation's of kids Who Framed Roger Rabbit moment, where it's this seeing these characters you've grown up with and know about interacting with people and seeing them in this slightly harsher light and having an interesting mystery story around them, because I'm an adult, I'm able to figure out most of the twists and turns.
Look at Mr. Smarty Pants over here.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, let's be honest, it's not like the mystery of Who Framed Roger Rabbit is that hard to figure out. You have a character named Judge Doom. Like, I'm pretty sure he's the bad guy. But I think it might be into that same kind of level where you have these kids with these characters they've known for a long time, and seeing them in this light, I think will really connect with a lot of them.
So Derrick, I have a question for you. As one who, as the one who reviewed the movie for us, you obviously enjoyed it a lot. But what prevented you from loving it, or what could they have done to make you love it? Do you think?
I mean, I agree with John. The plotting could be a little tighter. There's nothing inherently wrong with it, but there's some tightening moments. I think the chemistry between Justice Smith and Catherine Newton, so Tim and Lucy, don't always work. Like, they have some fun scenes together, but they never quite clicked with me the way that Tim and Pikachu did, for example, or even Pikachu and Psyduck. There was some really great moments there, and then the villain, where it was interesting. You could see where he's coming from with this whole thing, but he's nothing in depth or anything like that. It's just very kind of flat.
Yeah, I think flat's a good word for it. I think so I have two main complaints. I think one is I think the trailers did reveal a little bit too much. Maybe I just watched them too many times, but a lot of the key moments, or a lot of the biggest moments, were shown in the trailers. And a side effect of that is that when I saw them within the context of the movie, without the amazing music they chose for the trailer, it didn't feel quite as exciting as I was hoping some of those moments were. Maybe it's just me, but like, it's hard to compare when you have
Need a Hero.
Need a Hero, yeah, thank you. Mm-hmm. It's hard to hear some of those scenes within the context of the movie without the awesome backing music compared to the trailer. Mm-hmm.
Agreed. But there's one moment I thought that kind of surprised me, and that's the Mr. Mime scene. They showed that so much during the trailer that I thought I kind of seen that all. So when it got to that scene, I was like, oh, okay, we've seen this all in the trailer already. But it kept going, and there were more and more jokes, and they worked. And it's like they kind of saved some of the best content of that scene for the movie.
Yep.
It's just it's probably one of the best scenes in the movie, honestly.
Oh, it's great. It's fantastic.
It works so well. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it certainly. I was dying through a lot of that because I was like, I can't believe they're going in this direction. Like, when you think about it, it's like, oh my god. Uh-huh. It was really great in that way. And I had personally, seen the trailers a bunch, looked at them, and there's always that one scene like, what is going on here? And when you finally figure out, when I eventually figure out what actually was going on there, I was like, holy crap, that is cool.
Okay, I totally agree. Like, they caught me by surprise with that. Like, I kept wondering, like, when's this scene come into play, and how's this gonna work? And if you've seen the movie, you'll know what we're talking about. If you haven't, hopefully you won't. And we won't explain it. I will say, though, there's still one portion of it I don't even understand how it fully worked, even with the knowledge of what happened. I'm pretty sure they played up some of that because it still doesn't quite make sense to me. On the whole, though, it was cool. But getting back to the villain real quick, I agree. He felt a little bit flat, and it's a little bit disappointing because it kind of takes away from the climax of the film. For as cool as everything else was about it, it kind of like took away the triumph of the moment, I suppose.
Also, one thing I really like is this is a self-contained movie. There's no sequel bait. I thought they would have built up a cinematic Pokemon universe, and they might do. There might be sequels based in this universe. But the Detective Pikachu story is pretty much done. The story begins and it ends. There's nothing really hanging, which is actually it's kind of refreshing.
I was really surprised by that.
It's surprising too, because they've already greenlit a sequel as well. You would think it'd be such an easy thing to throw in, like, go Marvel style, make it a universe. But it's nice that they didn't. I agree. It's nice that it was completely
we're not going to end up with a Super Mario Brothers ending where it's like, you got to come back.
What a weird cliffhanger that was too. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, even back then they were sequel baiting things, and nope, that was never happening. And funny that we have a no sequel bait with something there's no way this movie's not going to make a ton of money and get a sequel.
Oh, I'm going to pin you down. I'm going to pin you down on that, Derrick. There's been a big debate on Resetera whether this movie would reach $1 billion or not. For context,
it will.
Okay, well, there we go. I was going to say for context, Endgame did that in a single weekend.
Yeah, it's not going to make it that fast, but I'm going to make a prediction here. I don't know about $1 billion. I do think its first weekend is going to beat Endgame's third weekend.
Okay, that's actually a good prediction. I'm less confident on that, and I'm more confident in I think it could reach $1 billion. But I think you might be right, Derrick, because Endgame will be hitting fatigue by that point. People, Detective Pikachu will be reaching a similar but also very different audience as well, I think, at the same time. So yeah, I think I think you might be right. So I think that could happen. I think I'm with John. I think it could reach $1 billion. So
yeah, I think it's important to note that Endgame brought its date backwards because of Detective Pikachu. It was originally going to be May, I believe, and they brought it back to April.
Good point.
And this is an international film. It's an international phenomenon. I think it's going to do great in a bunch of different countries. And it's also Endgame. While it's a great big epic movie, it also has 22 films of prior knowledge beforehand.
Exactly.
That kind of limits itself a little bit. Whereas Detective Pikachu, if you've heard of Pokemon, then you're fine to watch this movie.
Yep, pretty much.
Absolutely.
Right there with you.
And hey, happens to be we have a ton of Pokemon Go users. What do you know?
Right.
It works, and I think there's. Yeah, the trailer showed off a lot, but I think there is still plenty of surprises. There's one in particular, which I'm not even going to hint at where it's related to the movie, that caught me completely off guard.
Yeah. Also, one thing I love about this movie is it has echoes of the core Pokemon formula. So, in Rhyme City, Pokemon battling is just forbidden. But they still get Pokemon battles in there. Like, they squeeze it in for a little bit. It's not the focus of the movie, but there's definitely still references and little echoes to the actual core of Pokemon, which is really cool to see it on the big screen, but not being the focus of the movie.
It was such a great taste of that. Like, I would love this. I mean, I like that it wasn't a huge focus, and I appreciated the amount of time they did spend with it. But I would love to see more of that in the future. Like, that was such a fun segment, and also it makes me really long for a more real-time Pokemon game. It was nice. Like, it was cool seeing this more dynamic element to it, which is something we don't see in the games at all. Like, they're all, for the most part, turn-based with relatively limited animation. It's like, man, I wish it could really go the distance on these for some future Pokemon game.
Mm-hmm. I want that Pokeball from that scene. That thing looks so cool.
Right?
I want it so much, and there are some really beautiful moments in here. The Bulbasaur sequence that you got a hint of in the trailers stands out to me as a really good one. That's not to say though that the CG isn't. It doesn't have issues sometimes. Like, there is one scene in particular that I can't describe at all. Mentioned in my review, just didn't look good to me. Yeah.
So I'm gonna be honest. I actually didn't notice any issues at all with the CG. Maybe I was just enjoying it too much. And maybe it's something I would notice on rewatch, but nothing stood out to me as looking out of place during my initial watch.
What about you, John? Did you?
Not really, no. I think you get to a point where you, I think after the first initial Pokemon reveals, you get to a point where you don't really start noticing any differences because you just kind of accept the world as it is. So there weren't really any jarring CG moments for me, to be honest. So I'm sure, as André said, on a rewatch I'll probably notice it, but on my initial viewing, it was fine for me.
I will say too, speaking of, as you were touching on, John, like getting used to the world, I don't want to say it because it was a surprise to me, because I don't think any trailers hinted at it, but that first scene in the movie, that first sequence, that surprised me, and I kind of loved the whole setup for it, and it was so interesting to see a Pokemon I didn't expect portrayed in, used as the introduction for the movie, and I just thought that was really well done.
Sure, and again, that goes hand in hand with kind of echoing the actual game formulas too, because that's not really the point of the movie, but it's still trying to get parts of the game in there. Mm-hmm. And actually, now, speaking upon that, they also the Pokemon they choose to showcase in this movie is interesting as well, because there's a lot of popular Gen 1 Pokemon in there, but they also sprinkle a ton of different generations as well. So even if it's just background scenery, there's so many different Pokemon in this movie. And I think it's going to be a great way to get the mainstream audience more invested in other generations, because there's definitely still a Gen 1 stigma going around. And I think this is definitely the right step into getting more people to accept other Pokemon.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's so many great references here. Like, I kept scanning the background of the Rhyme City and just all the different references they were making, because some of them were extremely subtle.
Oh yeah, and there's Pokemon in there too that I don't think they revealed it at all in the trailers or elsewhere. So there are definitely surprises there, and I can't wait to go through like on the Blu-ray and really point out or discover what kind of Easter eggs are hiding there. And something we may have to do a second viewing of, Derrick, so we can do a video on it or something.
Yeah, and try to just end up going to this movie 3 or 4 times, having taking notes.
Exactly.
Projector. Hey, guy at the projector, could you wind a bit? I need to see that.
That'd be nice.
I swear they've added more Pokemon to the scenes as well. Like from the initial trailer, that scene where they show the entire city, I think I saw way more Pokemon in the actual cut, in the final cut, than the trailer.
Maybe.
So, so it seems there's a lot more to see than what we've initially been shown.
Yeah. So, I have another question for you guys. Is there anything about this movie you would like to see the games take inspiration from? Obviously, the movie was based on a game, which already, was doing its own unique thing by Pokemon standards. But now that we've seen the world of Pokemon realized in this way, is there anything you would like to see the games moving forward borrow from it?
There's one big thing, I think, and that's just seeing the Pokemon become more part of the world.
Yes.
So in the core games, Pokemon, you catch them, you battle with them. That's pretty much it. Some towns have trainers with Pokemon just sort of standing next to them, but that's not really enough. Some towns have a Machoke that's just sort of building something. Again, that's not really enough. I want to see Pokemon everywhere, like in the towns, in the wild, just interacting with the world and just doing a lot more. Because that really sells the vibe of Pokemon. They're not just creatures to battle with. They're parts. They're a legitimate part of the world, and you don't really get that in the games. And you definitely get that in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. Yeah, there's a scene I pointed out in the first trailer when in a little analysis was a Charmander using its tail to help heat like a firewalk, like hooking in the street. And there's like another really good example of that, but I don't want to reveal what it is. But yeah, you can see the Pokemon interacting and being with each other and helping, and it's so well done. And really does make you want to see that in the games. I would also argue that Tim is the most interesting Pokemon protagonist we've ever had. I want that in the games, please.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's plenty for a Detective Pikachu game to learn from this movie. I think most of it's the writing. Most of it's just making more chemistry between the characters. Because I like the game a lot, but writing-wise, I think there's a lot they can do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Rhyme City itself is way more interesting in the movie than it is in the games.
Yeah, it looked that way based on my small playtime with the game. Yeah, I mean, I think something we've kind of touched on too in loose terms is what also makes a movie work is that it clearly has a respect of the source material. Whereas Sonic is very questionable at this point. There's no doubting that Detective Pikachu had a lot of love put into it from people who, at least, if they didn't enjoy the games, they at least thoroughly researched them. Because, yeah, there are a lot of callbacks to here that I think will pass by some people if they're not familiar with it. Again, you don't need to have that knowledge to enjoy the movie, but there are elements to it that I think will be appreciated more by fans. And it's clear that they did their research for this film.
For sure. Like, most movies seem ashamed of their source material when it comes to when adapting games. Like for instance, the Mario Bros. Movie, they basically said, "Oh, Mario's a plumber, Yoshi's a dinosaur. Just do whatever you can with that." And that's kind of the gist of most video game movies. So it's refreshing to see them actually understand and respect what they're making.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very much like the early Marvel movies where, you did not expect to see the characters in their actual costumes or, like, being that faithful to their costumes. There is a respect to that, like, those origins, and we're getting that here with Detective.
Okay, I have one final question for you guys, and I'm going to try to... We are all going to try to avoid any major spoilers for here, but it's impossible for us to discuss it without possibly maybe spoiling something. So if you don't want to go in completely fresh, tune out now. But if you've already seen it or if you don't care, then you can stick with us. So hopefully everyone's gone that doesn't want anything potentially spoiled, even though we're gonna try our best not to. But my question for you guys is, with a sequel confirmed, how? How are they going to make a sequel?
Well, I guess what if they do a different Pokemon? So like Detective
That'd
Meowth.
be a potentially a good way of going about it. Then would you have Meowth from Team Rocket that can talk then, or something, or?
I don't know.
I feel like having the Pokemon talk was so key to making this movie work. And maybe you could do it without them talking, but that's what really made this one work. So.
Yeah, I'm not sure you can use these characters again, but then again, Pikachu is the most marketable Pokemon, so it's tough.
Yeah. I mean, they could just... It seems trite, but they could use the same excuse to have it back, but I don't know about that one.
I think John's right. I think you almost have to use different characters now. Maybe they could do some kind of thing along the lines of Up, where they have like a translator where you can hear Pokemon that way. it could have, maybe that would introduce like potential ramifications down the line with, why doesn't everyone just have one of these things? But that might be one solution where you can understand what the Pokemon are saying to you, and the audience hears it as English, for instance.
Right, because there's a very specific reason why Pikachu can talk, and of course we will not spoil it. But yeah, you can't do it again. You can't do that plot again, because otherwise you're repeating the exact same storyline. It's so tough to figure how they can do a sequel to this, unless they do use the characters again, and for some reason Pikachu can still talk. I don't know how they can do it.
Yeah, I mean the characters. I think the characters will come back. I don't know if they'll be back in the same capacity. I think they might be like there and helping out with a brand new character, and yeah, I have no idea on that part. That is certainly a tricky part for the screenwriter to figure out. How do you make a direct sequel to this? And the answer might be, you don't. But if you want another talking Pokemon, I would not refuse a Team Rocket movie with Meowth.
I would love a live-action Team Rocket movie.
I'm in. Yes. I'm so in.
Have to change Jesse's hair, but, I mean, you could totally make it work.
Yeah. So do you guys think this is a turning point for video game movies, or is it the exception that proves a rule?
So tough to say because Sonic's just come out with his trailer.
Yeah.
The timing of that really is amazing.
Well, I think for Nintendo are doing a pretty good job. So we got the Mario movie from Illumination coming out, and assumably that's going to be okay because it's a full CG movie. I think they'll do all right.
Yeah, I think if we have the same level of care and working together that we had here in Mario, I think Illumination can do something good, because you have to remember, Rob Letterman, his filmography is all over the place. He directed Shark Tale, he directed Gulliver's Travels, he directed Monsters vs. Aliens, which was okay, but yeah, it's like none of his movies have been that amazing, and this is the best of his filmography.
Well,
yeah, Goosebumps did very well. I have not seen it myself, but my nephew loves it. So I think he's on an upward path, but it's just, again, showing that Nintendo got this kind of quality out of them, or maybe this just this passion project worked. I don't know, but something clicked here, and hopefully it can click again with Illumination.
Yeah. I think you might have hit the nail on the head there with Nintendo sort of managing the project, because Nintendo's very protective of their IP these days. And it feels like with the Mario movie, the original one, they just kind of put Mario in Hollywood and let them do it. And I think Nintendo of today wouldn't do that. And especially the Pokemon Company, they're so protective of their IP. So it's so surprising they let them do this movie, but they must have had a lot of quality control over it. So I think Nintendo will probably still put out some great video game movies, but whether that's going to be the rule for all companies, probably not. Like looking at Sega, probably not.
Yeah, I think retaining some level of quality control is important, as we've seen now with the Sonic movie, where Sega apparently had no real control over the portrayal of Sonic, and that's turned into an issue. I am stoked for the Mario movie. I have no idea how it's going to turn out. I hope it turns out well. I hope that Mario's learned their I hope Nintendo's learned their lesson from the first Mario movie, and I hope Detective Pikachu is kind of showing that the way forward for how video game movies could be handled. But yeah, I'm excited regardless. I hope Nintendo continues to make more video game movies. It's something, I want to see it regardless of whether it's good or bad. I hope it ends up good. But I love seeing, these properties we're familiar with in a whole new light. Whether it's a TV show or movie or whatever else. Theme parks,
I think if Mario does well, it's inevitable for us to get a Legend of Zelda movie.
I think so, too. Yeah. I'm still crushed that Netflix rumor never ended up turning out to be true. I would kill for a Zelda TV show.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd also really like a Metroid movie in the style of Alien. It's tough because Metroid's just about one single character, but I think they could make it work. It'd be a tough project, but it'd be interesting to see that.
Oh, I think so too. I think that could be a really interesting, dark Nintendo movie. Basically, a little bit like Castaway combined with Alien, I feel like.
Yeah, John, you and I actually had a bit of a conversation this on one of the podcasts about what we do with a Metroid movie.
Yeah, right, we did.
So, I think they could do it. It'd require a lot of finagling.
Yes, it would. Alright guys, any final thoughts about Detective Pikachu before we wrap it up here?
Go see it.
Yeah, pretty much.
I want to see it again.
That's it.
So
Yeah, we all
there you
had a
go.
really good time, and we run like the spectrum of Pokemon fans, or at least between me and anyone else does, because I'm very minimalistically a Pokemon fan, whereas Derrick is definitely on the more hardcore end. So, but we both enjoyed it all the same.
Exactly.
All right, and with that, I think we're about done here. So thank you so much for watching. If you liked our discussion, make sure to like and follow us on Facebook and Twitter at GameXplain. You can find links to those in the description below, as well as Instagram. I always forget to promote that, so check that out as well. And of course, stay tuned to GameXplain for more on Detective Pikachu at some point, and everything else Nintendo as well. We'll catch you later. Bye.